Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Unleash Your Voice. I'm your host, Priya Sam, and I'm so glad you're here because today's episode is honestly one I wish I could go back and give to my younger self because this is something I see constantly with the women I work with, and it's something I myself did for years without even realizing it. Here's the thing. You are probably really good at your job, like really, really good. You lead strategy, you drive results, you solve problems before anyone else even sees them coming. And yet, something is getting lost in translation. Your impact isn't landing the way it should. You're getting passed over for opportunities. You might walk out of interviews and promotion conversations feeling like you didn't show up as the leader you actually are. So, what is going wrong? Well, I want to make the case today that it's not your experience, it's not your credentials, it's a very specific language habit that is quietly erasing you, even when you're the one leading the room. I call it the we problem. And by the end of this episode, you're going to know exactly what it is, why it happens, and most importantly, how to fix it. So, let's get into it. Before I get into the specific habit, I want to give you some context because understanding the why makes the fix make so much more sense. There's a gap that exists for a lot of high achieving women, a gap between the value they are delivering every single day and how clearly that value is being communicated to the people who make decisions about their careers. If you've been around for a while, you know that I call this the articulation gap. And when you're stuck in the articulation gap, it's not because you're not doing the work. It's not because you don't have the experience. It's because your language isn't matching your level. Here's what makes this so sneaky. The more senior a role is, the more your language matters. At mid to senior levels, leaders are hired on judgment, ownership, and impact. Interviewers and decision makers are listening closely for how you think, how you take accountability, how you identify problems and drive solutions. They're not just listening to what you did, they're listening to how you talk about what you did. And if there's any vagueness there, they are going to fill in the blanks themselves. And often it's not in your favor. They're going to underestimate you. So today, we're tackling the number one language habit that keeps brilliant women stuck in the articulation gap. The one I see almost universally, and that is hiding behind we language. Okay, so let's break this down. High performing women are almost without exception exceptional collaborators. That's a strength. That's a real leadership skill. And because of that, when they talk about their work in interviews, in performance conversations, while networking, they default to we. And if you're nodding along thinking, I do this all the time, I don't want you to feel bad because the most important thing is just to have awareness about it and also to remember that being collaborative is a good thing. It often sounds like we exceeded our quota. We launched the initiative. We improved retention. My team handled the stakeholder alignment. Does that sound familiar? Here's the problem. All of those things might be completely true, but none of them answer the one question that actually matters to the person across the table. What did you specifically do? When you default to we, the interviewer or decision maker has to guess your individual contribution. And when people have to guess, they typically assume it was more of a team effort, that the result didn't happen specifically because of you. Then you end up sounding like a member of the team rather than someone who led the team or even who led part of the project. Here's what kills me about this. The women I work with who do this are often the ones who are most responsible for the outcomes they're describing. They often did build the strategy. They drove the cross-functional alignment. They're the reason it worked, but their language makes them invisible. Okay, let me give you a real example. I was working with a client, I'll call her Shannon. She was a director of customer success, making 230K in her previous role. She had great experience. Her resume was landing. She was getting interviews for roles she was excited about. But she kept getting passed over in the later rounds and couldn't figure out why. When I asked her to walk me through one of the biggest projects she'd worked on in her career, she said something like this. Well, my team revamped our client onboarding process in my last role. It was a pretty big cross functional initiative, and I helped lead the team through it. The process was pretty cumbersome. So we worked with a few different teams to improve it, and we were able to complete that in a few months. And it made a big difference in how things were running and our client satisfaction. Now, in her head, this was a massive achievement, and it was. But listening to that answer, I had no idea what was actually at stake, and I had almost no idea what she personally did. So I started to ask her questions. Why did this project matter to the business? Turns out customers were churning because the onboarding process was so broken. Millions of dollars were at stake. Had anyone tried to fix it before? I asked her. Yes, she said, 3 other leaders had tried and failed. Okay, big detail that was missing from that original story. Then I asked her, what specifically did you do? She told me about how she started by meeting individually with leaders across every team to understand their pain points before proposing a solution. A really thoughtful, high EQ approach to change management that most people wouldn't think to do. None of those very important, crucial differentiating details were in her original answer. That's the we problem in action. The experience was there, the leadership was there, the language wasn't capturing it. Now, I want to get really practical because awareness is the first step. You need to know exactly how to identify the problem so you know what to change. So, if you're finding yourself using a lot of we language, the team language, there are 3 specific language habits that show up alongside the we problem. And if you're already nodding along to this episode, I'd be willing to bet you're doing at least one of them, maybe all 3. And again, I don't want you to feel bad if you are, but I want you to acknowledge it. And then I'm going to tell you how to fix it. Okay, habit number 1 is what we've been focusing on for the first part of this episode. It is hiding behind we language. This is the big one. The fix is simple, but it takes some intentionality. You don't need to take out we because being able to work collaboratively is important, and a lot of hiring managers do really value that. But you need to add in I. So the formula is we or my team plus I plus your specific leadership contribution. So instead of we exceeded the quota 3 quarters in a row, try my team exceeded quota 3 quarters in a row. And personally, I closed at 115% each quarter and led the team in new pipeline generation. Do you see the difference? You're not erasing the team. You're not being boastful. You're just making your specific contribution visible. Because if you don't name your impact, no one else is going to name it for you. Okay, another example. Instead of we launched a new initiative, try my team executed a successful launch and I was responsible for leading the strategy and guiding the cross-functional execution. That small addition makes all the difference. And again, you don't have to take out the we, you just need to add in the I. So really think about this when you think about your performance reviews, right? Having to do with self-review. You can talk about outcomes and what the team did, but make sure you add in that I moment. In job interviews, this is even more important. And in job interviews, you should be saying I more than you say we. Okay, habit number 2 is minimizing your impact. This one is sneaky because it often comes from a really good place. You don't want to seem arrogant, right? You're trying to be humble. And humility is a leadership quality, but there's a difference between humility and self-erasure. Okay, the minimizing language that we need to get rid of sounds like this. I just helped with. It was nothing, really. I was lucky to X. I'm not an expert, but I think this worked out okay. My number one tip here, delete the word just from your vocabulary. Seriously, anytime you put just in front of something you did, you're shrinking it, right? I just identified a gap in the process versus I identified a gap in the process and proactively addressed it. Same action, but completely different weight because of that one word. Here's the reframe I want you to sit with. When someone praises your work and your instinct is to say, oh, it was nothing, instead try, thank you. It was really meaningful to me because X, right? Maybe it's because it was my first time leading a project like that. You're not boasting, you're sharing why it mattered to you. And that is both more honest and more memorable. One other swap worth practicing, instead of I'm not an expert, but try based on my experience. It's confident, grounded, it's not arrogant, it is clear. Okay, habit number 3, seeking validation at the end of your answers. This is the one people least expect me to bring up, but once I name it, everyone recognizes it immediately. You can deliver the most powerful, well-structured answer and then accidentally undo all of it with how you end. It sounds like this. Does that make sense? I hope I answered your question. I'm not sure if that's what you were looking for. Let me know if that was okay. Even if everything before that was strong, those endings plant a seed of doubt. You are literally handing over your authority right at the moment when you most need to hold it. The key takeaway here, senior leaders invite questions, they do not ask for approval. Here are some swaps. Instead of, does that make sense? I'm happy to go deeper on any part of that. Instead of, I hope I answered your question, that's how I approached the situation and delivered this result. End with the outcome, end with confidence. Instead of, let me know if that was okay, let me know what you'd like me to expand on. You're still leaving the door open. You're still being collaborative and inviting questions and offering to go deeper, but you are keeping your power while you do it. Okay, I want to bring you to another client of mine named Mira because I think her story really illustrates what's possible when you close this gap. So when Mira came to me, she was making 85K and she could not break into that first six-figure role. She was getting some early stage interviews, but not making it past them. And the moment I started talking with her, I could hear it. The minimizing, the we language, the hedging. She was operating at a genuinely higher level than her language was showing. So we didn't change her experience. We changed 3 things. We built out a bank of leadership level stories so she had her impact ready to articulate. We anchored every answer in outcomes and strategic thinking. And we practiced out loud because your brain needs to get comfortable saying this language before it comes naturally. A few weeks in, she got recruited for a dream role. She nailed every question. She got the offer. Guys, Mira went from 85K to 135K, her first senior role, and a 50K jump. Honestly, though, the thing that moved me most wasn't the salary. It was the way she started to see herself differently. When your language finally reflects your value, something shifts internally too. You start to believe in yourself in a new way. You start to show up differently, not just in that interview, but in every professional conversation going forward. And that's exactly what I want for you too. So here's what I want you to take away from today. Leadership language is not about being louder. It's not about being more aggressive or more extroverted or changing anything about your personality. It's just about being clear. It's about sounding as experienced as you actually are. You're delivering more impact than your language is capturing. I see it all the time. So start there. Pick one of these 3 habits, the one that resonated the most, and commit to working on just that one in your emails, in meetings, in how you talk about your work. Small shifts consistently applied compound fast. And if this episode hits home for you, if you found yourself nodding along thinking, okay, I really do need to work on this, I would love to support you in going deeper. And the best place to start is in my free Power Story and Presence workshop coming up June 16th to the 18th. There will be sessions from noon to 1 p.m. Eastern on those 3 days. I'll link to this in the show notes. And again, it is completely free. You can also DM me Power Story on LinkedIn or Instagram, and I will get you signed up. Thank you so much for listening. If this was helpful, share it with a colleague or a friend who you think needs to hear it, because I promise you, she is out there hiding behind we right now, and she deserves to be seen. And so do you. I'll see you next week. And until then, remember, your story is the one thing you have that no one else has. Happy storytelling.